Alright, let's make sure everything works. This is gonna get dumb if nothing works. I literally have not touched anything. Alright, music's good. Turning down music so you can hear me. Testing 1, 2, 3. Here we go. Oh, look, the countdown clock is working. So is this mic. Okay, here we go. Look at that. That looks alright. All the overlays are working. All the buttons are working. Can I minimize this window now so it's out of the way? Alright. Is this microphone popping yet? Because I've got it cranked up pretty high. That way you can hear my voice, even if I speak at a very low tone. That's dumb. Okay, everything's working. I can say hi to people. Can we just... Can we just keep it to this very, very small group of people right now? I know most people are like, man, I wish there was 100 plus some odds coming in to watch my live streams, but I gotta be honest with you, I've never been comfortable with that. So is there any way that we can just keep it to this very small, concentrated amount of people that's in here now? I'm gonna leave it to you guys to have like the secret password to let people in. But I'd rather have a small barbecue than a massive, massive house party. You know what I mean? So while I have you all here, and while we are all relatively a small group, I'm gonna say hi, and then I'm gonna get to work. So who's in the room? Who is in this room? Checking, checking. Hello, Unhinged Entertainment. How are you? Mr. Rob, the Replicator, good evening, good morning to you. How are you? Peter, thank you so much for advertising for me on Twitter. I don't care how good you are, the fact that you did it, I very much appreciate. Thank you so much for spreading the good word. Appreciate you being here. Appreciate your support. Wilson Debuha, hello. Am I saying that right? Debuha? Anyway, Wilson, hello. Thank you for being here. Andrew Taz, how are you? Good evening. Black Rose, how are you? Good evening. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for joining us. Strike Boy, hello. Welcome back. I recognize that very distinct name. Very, very cool. Thank you for being here. Atomic Bulldog, how are you? Good evening. Okay, it's just us. We're just going to be quiet. Can I let a few more people in here before we get started on the progress report? I think you guys, does that work for you, progress reports? Pages, when it comes to, let's say, the colors that, that Jules has turned in, plus the pages I did this week? Is that cool? Hello, Charo. Good evening. How are you? Good evening, my time. Good, appropriate timeline for you. I borrow ideas. How are you? You know what? I borrow ideas. Can I tell you something I was thinking about you earlier? Because typically when I say hello to you in either this chat or actually no, not this chat. I have the liberty of being able to say the entire thing called I borrow ideas. But from time to time, when we're when we are in another creator stream, I typically say IBI. But then I realize maybe you don't like that. That would be disrespectful to you. I'd hate for that to be the, if that's something that you don't care for. That would suck. I say IBI. But if you don't like it, I borrow ideas it is. You're cool with it. All right, cool, man. Cool. I was just talking to my buddy Michael DiNicola, who was streaming earlier today, and there was something that came up on my Twitter feed that made me smile. It's just a I don't want to go too deep into it because it will just derail the intent and theme of what my stream is supposed to be. But somebody put, oh gosh, what is it? It's like this. Last month was Black History Month. This month is celebrating women. I think it is. I don't know what the official title is. Anyway, that's not the point. The point is, I saw Twitch had put up they said celebrating Women Month, but instead of woman, they put WOMXN. Which, listen, if you believe in that, and that's a thing that you sort of identify with, that term, all power to you. And somebody actually took the time, thank you to whomever that was, on my Twitter feed to explain to me what that meant. But then I spoke to a handful of people in Michael DiNicola's chat, some of whom are in that, some of whom in spirit that term is supposed to represent, and they can't stand it. They find it genuinely insulting. And I thought, like, it's fascinating. Similar to the term Latinx, which my good friend Nikki can't stand hearing. We actually sort of tongue-in-cheekly say the word phonetically, which is Latinx, and she can't stand it. And I thought that was kind of funny, the world that we live in. And I'm not ashamed to admit that I'm an old curmudgeon, but I am not beyond calling you what you would be preferred to call. And I think that goes back to what I was talking to IBI earlier, which is, hey man, if you don't care for that, I'll call you by your preference, right? What I don't like is, and I will never get behind it, is when you have to compel me to do it. Does that make sense? I'll accommodate you any which way, but the moment you say, hey, we are represented by this, and from here on down, you need to call us that. You need to call us that. I'm not a fan. Latinx is trending, and I'm disgusted by it as a Latino. I'd rather. I know, and I'm wondering by which consensus they came to land upon that term and said, totally cool. I suspect in Black Rose's case, they didn't take his opinion into account. Because I've heard really poor, I'll say conservatively, allergic reactions to that concept, or to that term. So I know International Women's Day is this month, but I didn't know there was an entire month. The more you know. Yep. Here we are. Giuliano, how are you? I like to call Giuliano my life preserver, my escape hatch, my space, my intergalactic space traveling rocket. Giuliano is the colorist, and that's underserving exactly all the heavy lifting that he's doing for Athena. But he's basically the lifesaver of the book, so thank you for being here, Giuliano. Jules, as I lovingly call him, thank you for being here. I can call you sexy, absolutely. Sometimes I identify as a battle axe. I'm glad there's no Philippine X. Oh, you just wait. You just wait. Very soon there will be. You make enough of a stink, and I think there will be. Okay, progress report time, is it? I think we have enough people here. Hello, Oz, how are you? Omega, I don't know if I said hello to you when you walked in, but hello, thank you for being here. Donald, hello, how are you? Good evening, thank you for taking the time to visit and hang out. Appreciate that. Alright, where was I? Alright, we're gonna take a look at art. Can we take a look at art? Can I switch screens now? Cool. Here we go. Press this button. There we are. Okie dokie. First, for our progress report, and I want to talk to you about something that I stole from Citizen Kane, which is like a declaration of principles plan that I'm going to present to chat, and obviously as publicly as I possibly can, as far as setting up expectation. I spoke with Rob. Rob, are you still in chat? Replicator, are you still in chat? I spoke to him about this in private in regards to what I think one of the key attributes moving forward is going to be pretty critical, at least for a new time crowdfunder, new time creator who's about to go into a crowdfunding space like me. So, Panda, Jason, do you still have all of those original marker pieces that I sent to you a long time ago as back when I used to stream and was going to use as incentive pieces to have people to have people subscribe to the stream? I think you may still have it. If you don't, totally understand if you don't. But I could have sworn I sent those to you because it was going to be sent out from your end of the world, considering you're more centralized in the United States of America. Okay. Where was I? Okay, let's take a look at what Jules has delivered. And forgive me, some of these you've seen already, but I'm not sure if I had shown them to you, so forgive me if you've seen it, but I hope you don't mind seeing them one more time. You do? Okay, cool, because I think the idea here is we can still leverage them as pieces of art that we can incentivize for my stream. That way I'm not having to generate something new. So maybe every week we have like an original art giveaway, an original art giveaway in which we can obviously give it away to as many people who'd be interested in having it. I just have to find a way to how to raffle it off while I'm streaming. If you guys have any good ideas, I'd really appreciate it. Okay, one thing at a time. Let me see if I can find copies of what those images look like. What the heck? Where did I... Is it under OBS? Would it be under OBS? Because I want to show you guys the the images that Jason has. Here we go. Slideshow. I'm going to hope that I can share my screen with you, and so that we can do a slideshow of the image that you still have. By the way, if at any point, Jason, you don't have these anymore for whatever reason, maybe we ended up giving them away a long time ago and just didn't make note of them until now, please start jotting that down so we'll know which. Is that cool? Cool. Okay, so before I get too off track, I'm going to share my screen with you guys, and I can show you the images that, can you guys see that okay? The images that are going to be available for our giveaway. Is that cool? Is that all right? Okay, there we go. We're just going to cycle through them really quick. I hope that's big enough for you guys to see. I hope so. I think it's pretty big. Here we go. So it's going to be these marker sketches that I did, but way back in the day. To give you guys context, way back in the day, I had a bucket full of Copic markers that I had collected through X amount of conventions that I had done, maybe about 3 years worth, where I would go to a show, totally forget to bring my markers with me. I would go to the stand that had these vendors selling Copic markers, and I would buy what I needed. And by the time I'd get home from the show, it would just kind of, accumulate. That was after I had picked out all the ones that I needed for a complete set. There was still a ton left. So while I was streaming that year, this was usually 2 years ago, While I was streaming, I did, using those old leftover markers, I did these head sketches. And I was going to use them to incentivize people to subscribe to my channel. I suspect that I could probably do that again now, more specifically to the people who are at this stream, to hopefully the very obvious motivation is to get more people in here while I'm streaming. So here we go. Again, Jason, if you don't have these, you just tell me. Is that cool? I think these are by way of size 8.5 by 5.5, so half letter size. Gosh, I really hope Jason has some of this stuff. I may have lost. If he has lost it, I totally understand. It's been years since I even saw these. Only recently did I see them pop up on one of my drives, and that's what I ended up sharing this morning. Gosh, I really like that venom. Look how rich these markers are as far as, anyway, that was it. Okay, next thing, I am going through and walking you guys through the progress report, right? Cool. Oh, let me go back. Who did I miss? Who did I miss? Let me say hello. I'd intended to get everything back to you, but if we can still do it, rock on. Right on, man. Thank you. I already said hello. Manifesto, yes? No? Hello. How are you, man? NTM Comics, hello. Good evening. Thank you for being so patient for me to get back to saying hello in chat. It's a juggling act over here. Christopher John, how are you? Good evening. What do you mean what happened to Donald's stream? Donald was streaming? I missed it. Anyway, hello, man. Did I say hello to Eddie already? Mr. Eddie Winkler, good evening. Thank you for joining us. I want Athena art. You want stretch art for... You want wait. I want Athena art or AA stretch Leprechator or at stretch. You know what, Rob? It's very hard to read. You need that Dark Phoenix. You got it. I want to win. You want to win a raffle? Yeah, I have to learn how to set that up. First of all, when we were setting, and you guys tell me if you've heard of anything like this, but back when we were talking about setting up this raffle, there were all sorts of legalities, like little tiny landmines that we needed to avoid for whatever reason as far as giveaways are concerned, especially on Twitch. I don't know if that's still relevant on YouTube, if I was being lied to, but that's what I remember. Like the extra little... abrasive headache that I didn't want to deal with, Behind the scene question, are you using OBS or Ecamm? It's Ecamm. OBS on a Mac is really burdensome on resources. So Eddie Winkler looks amazing, Eric. Thank you very much, Eddie Winkler. Appreciate it. He's writing in Australian. I suspect that you're talking about Rob. I think what's amazing about Rob is that I know he tries to play it super cool. And he's got the He's actually got a really great head shape for a guy who, for a guy who wants to communicate super cool. And back when he just got his mohawk, even, came off like an even more cooler badass. But what I really appreciate about Rob is that he's as excitable as anybody when it comes to creative things, He's, would it be insulting if I said he's giddy? I think he's giddy. And that's pretty freaking awesome. Jasper, how are you? Good evening. Thank you for joining us. Ryan Cardinal, how are you? The man, the myth, the legend. That's not me. I think that's Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee back there? That'd be freaking sweet, right? If I turned around and Bruce Lee's back there. It's like, be like water, my friend. Raffles are tricky because they can be deemed as a form of gambling. See? That's it. I heard that. And I thought, I wonder what the best way, if there's a way to get around that. But that's not the first time I've heard it. That's what I was talking about. Yeah, because Max, how dare you say something so true, sir, and something so obvious? Good evening, Nikki. Now, this is the individual, I'd say my good friend Nikki, who's the one who takes exception to the term Latinx, or as we lovingly, endearingly refer to it, Latinx. How are you, Nikki? You're going to bed? Okie doke. Am I caught up? Holy cow. What is OBS? Open Broadcast Software. I think that's what OBS stands for. I'm getting a new MacBook this week, and I need recommendations on software to install that is not Adobe. This one is freaking awesome. It is not a resource hog at all, which is Ecamm Live. Pretty freaking awesome. Can we see the ARC Athena, that ARC 001 cover A? Yeah, sure. Stand by. I'm trying to get through chat really quick, Peter, but thank you so much for keeping me on the straight and narrow. I appreciate that. You can't do raffles on campaign pages because of the gambling thing, but we want free art. We got to find a way around that, man. I want to give you guys free art, I want to give you guys free art for your time and effort. Obviously, it's thank you for supporting me. Thank you for supporting my channel and my work. I don't know, we get around the gambling thing. Eric, how do you pronounce Womsno? Man. Womsican. I don't know, man. I'm not the guy. Although I did get a really appropriate, which I termed that is the perfect return. The question that I asked was, what is the X for? And somebody replied with an animated GIF with Professor X, with an animated GIF of Professor X broadcasting his powers, and he says, "You know what the X is for?" And I said, "Perfect, perfect. What a perfect explanation for what the X is for." If you have a Mac, go with Ecamm. OBS is a good tool, but a resource hog. Exactly, 100%. I'll take the art scraps in your trash can. I know that thing. No way. Is it full? Can you guys see? You know who's an amazing traditional artist is my wife. My wife has the sort of art style that is so disgustingly consumable. So disgustingly consumable. It's good for anything that you like, short of maybe super violent X-Men comics. But it's like old school Disney combined with Miyazaki. It can be turned into like a fairy tale book, or just an amazing illustrator. She's the one that has art laying all around our studio. Freaking crazy. John Devlin, how are you? Good evening. She has a great endearing style. Yeah, I know, that's the thing. If she heard that from you, she'd be totally excited. She hears it from me, she's like, whatever. I don't care. All right, here we go. Can you do giveaways? Don't call it a raffle, but raffle it off? No, I don't. I honestly don't know. I don't know. Does Dave Finch do something like that? Dave Finch raffle off the pieces as he finishes them at the end of his stream? Does he just give it away? He's like, first, show us some of her art. That's a great, hold on. Is it Insta? Hey, Jason, can you bring up Cassandra? Jamal, how are you? I like the term concocted. Although I know transgender women who are like, that's insulting. I would rather just be called a woman. You've done it before. It's not a big deal. I like the balls on you, Australian. I'm into it. Did Jason leave? Is that what Jason was texting me about? Hey, I gotta go. Stand by. Here, I'll do it. Wouldn't it be embarrassing if I didn't know? Instagram.com/ if I didn't know my own Instagram account. I'm gonna double check, because heaven forbid I send you to the wrong Instagram account. Okay, that should be the right one. Instagram. Asking now. Okay. How are you, Lex? Good evening. Did you put this twice? Because I read this. And I'm with you. Okay, here we go. Where shall I start? You guys tell me if you guys have seen this before. Oh, that's obnoxious and big. Here we go. I'll do it like this. Whoop. Open so I can shrink it. Can you guys see that all right? There is this scene in issue 1 where Arc Poseidon runs again. Spoilers, by the way. Spoilers. There is this scene in issue 1 in which the Arc Poseidon runs into this group of bad guys, and I don't want to get into how. And Jules saw it. The colorist extraordinaire Jules saw it, and I don't want to tell you how batshit insane it is to have those pages colored by him. It's so much fun to see his take on what happens in that sub corridor. That's pretty awesome. Okay. Now the great thing is, I have this here twice. Excuse me. The great thing is, we have extended conversation, Jules and I, about, when you first delivered this this page, he was taking a much simpler approach, and I asked him just to, not to busy it up, but to give it a bit more texture by adding a certain complementary color to the base color, because he was coloring not everything blue, not everything yellow, but you know what I mean? And so I asked him to add a dash of complementary color in the shadow areas. Holy cow, this kid. Everybody's a kid to me. I'm 65, 69, somewhere. I feel like I'm 75 years old, but Jules is an amazing, amazing collaborator, but more importantly, he's an amazing artist that has multiple gears that he can switch into. But the bigger point that we were discussing in regards to this page is that we really wanted to differentiate the visual experience of what it meant when you were with both arc teams, right? Which is if you were with Arc Athena, if you were with Arc Poseidon, we wanted to have a certain feel to those scenes. I really cranked up. Oh shit. What's a good example? There's certain scenes in the Arc Athena scenes and the Arc Poseidon scenes that come off a little bit like Tony Scott, a hyper, the dial is turned up a little bit into saturation, But when we go into the real world, this page is representative of when, quote unquote, Arc Athena goes live and they start broadcasting their adventures to the world in their own personal social medias, right? we wanted to take that color palette and shift it back to go like, oh, it's a bit more grounded, right? It's a bit more, you have more handles on it in regards to a standard way of how you may be understanding a current comic book palette now, right? So that when we switch back into the adventure, like you saw the previous page where the magenta was just kicking your butt, you know there's a scene switch and then there's a thematic style switch, right? And that's by design. We had extended conversations about that. And the other thing was that we were trying to figure out as we were. I'm going to go back to this page again. As all of them go live, as all of the members of Athena go live at the same time, it's broadcasting throughout the world. So we were doing a little bit of like Googling in regards to, okay, so here is, here's Johannesburg, here's Seoul, South Korea, here's Spain, here's Brazil, here's New York, here's Washington, D.C. And we needed to know where that was in time of day, So that was a pretty fun exercise to understand. Like if we say, hey, we're at, 7 o'clock New York time, what does the rest of the world look like, So that was pretty interesting. Anyway. And then, so here's what I mean when we were talking about. I wish I could find the original page for this. Let me see if I have it on there. No, I don't. So here's an instance in which Giuliano's like skill really comes into play, right? Initially, all these panels when they're in the press room for all of the new media people that's covering Athena, this was all sort of like purple, and I asked Jules, like, just as a complementary color, whenever we have all of those backlit screens and spotlights and what have you, can we drop a little bit of yellow into them? And man, he just killed it, right? He just absolutely killed it. I can't say how much I appreciate, first of all, how easy, what an amazing collaboration that we have, how easy it is to work with him, but also how quick he is on the uptake, right? Which is like, we'll do it the one time, right? And then the next time the next time something like that will pop up, it's almost, we don't have to communicate about it anymore. One of those things is something as simple as, and I think if you guys follow me on my social media, on Instagram and on Twitter under Eric Canetti, that's one word. It's things like this. Can you guys see this textured floor? I'm not a huge fan of a clean grad, which means like if this was being colored in Photoshop, you select one end of the color spectrum, put that in the box, and then you get the color picker and you put the other end of the color spectrum in the box below it. You take the gradation tool, whether it be a radial one or a linear one, and you just go grad, right? And everything turns out to have this smooth, almost synthetic way that it looks. And I remember in one of the earlier pages that he was trying stuff on when they were fighting inside one of those tunnels, inside the oil rig, which I'll show you in a second, the actual oil rig itself. Giuliano just did that technique, and I thought, like, I don't think that works. It looks too synthetic, right? Like it didn't have any personality. And he's like, so what's the solution? What do you think we can do about it? Which is a great question from a collaborator. What do you think we can do about it? I don't know how, you guys don't understand how powerful that concept is, or like that sentence is. And so I was flipping through a bunch of the other pages that he had turned in, and he had actually done it in the background of one of the images already. And I said, here, you're doing it here, and I think we should maintain that. And he's like, oh, cool, easy peasy. And 5 minutes later, he comes back and he delivers this page. Without that really super clean grad. And like I said, God bless him. I mean, he gets it. Like you see it on the floor there, you see it in bits and pieces in the brush strokes behind her. Not a clean grad, which just gives it so much nicer texture, at least to me, which is great. And so, yeah, I think he's already come back and changed up all of the backgrounds. And that's the oil rig that Athena is going to end up fighting in issue 1. So it was great. Great collaboration. Great creative person to be able to talk to about mood, first of all, subtext, second of all, and then ultimately lighting, you know? Anyway. Awesome, awesome. Next. Okay, we're going to go over... By the way, have I said spoilers a million times? But before I go, let me take a sip of this water. And let me go back to chat. And let me catch up with everybody. Let me see if I can scroll up so I can do this chronologically as opposed to going backwards. Is that okay? Be patient with me. The book looks amazing. Thank you, Eddie Winkler, but that's all Jules. That is totally all Jules. I will take very little credit for it. He's the guy, he's the glue that holds it all together, the mortar that holds the tower or the structure together. I'm into it. I'm a big fan of his. I've already talked about the OBS thing. Yes, thank goodness. Have I already guys given you... Oh, this is when we were talking about Cassandra's art. Yeah. Here we go. Hope Juliano's still in chat because they're about to compliment you up and down, dude. Look at that. Juliano. Jules. And this is all love for your work, man. There you go. I like how he says spoilers like I'll remember anything in the morning, let alone in a few months. Eric is cute. Aw, thanks for tolerating me. But I don't want to spoil anything for you for those of you who have almost like photographic memory. I don't know. YouTube did not notify me that you went live. I'm glad I looked at the YouTube homepage and saw the red icon. Thank you so much, Billy Baxo. Baxco. That's a transition for you. I heard somebody say your name earlier. I think it was Michael, and he said Billy Basco, and I thought, is that right? Is the C silent? Basco, or is it Baxco? Baxco. Anyway. Yeah, you can definitely see that contrast between these two pages. Good example. Yeah, he's brilliant. It was a good conversation, and he does it almost automatically now, so I owe him so much. Rhiannon, how are you? Thank you for being here. Are you going to count down for your launch? Oh, this is for Unhinged. Are you going to count down for your launch? You should. He sounds like someone that wants to perfect his craft. Yeah, and here's another critical thing that Jules says. I did this, but at the end of the day, you make the call. And you're like, whoa. Zero ego on this kid. It's like, I did this. Here are my... like, I never go, hey, Jules, that's wrong. I ask, that's a good approach. What was going through your head? Not to challenge him, but to understand it. Because if it makes sense, then I leave it alone. But then there are times, and I can't remember which one it was, he was opting for clarity, which to me was like, well, yeah, that's almost my mantra. But then I also wanted to add a little bit more of the atmosphere. So here's something that he and I, it's a consistent, ongoing conversation, not because he doesn't understand it, because he's got a firm grasp on it. He had a firm grasp on it very quickly, which is if you're in an environment similar to where I am right now, right, and there's orange light behind me, I always want the character to be impacted by whatever ambient light or, local light is happening, because to me, it grounds you into that environment more. It grounds the characters into that environment more. What I don't like, especially in recent comics, and I think this is a cheat, right? They bathe everything in that color, right? So they find and I can't stand this color palette. I don't know what made it popular, but it's like deep pink and purple and just some weird desaturated end of this rainbow or end of this color palette rainbow. And I'm like, why? And I realized why. I know why people use that palette, because it's an easy cheat to make it seem like a person is inhabiting that environment. It doesn't take that much thought to go like, well, if the background is like this dark bluish purple, if I were to make them like this mid-range color purple, then job well done. And I'm like, Yeah, but now everybody's doing it and they don't know why they're doing it. They're just doing it because they saw 3 books do it, right? The first person that did that understood that concept, but the X amount of people that's been copying it, they don't know why they're doing it. They're just using the palette. And that's infuriating to me. And it also speaks to, in a way, a quote unquote modern comic book palette, that everything is being colored in that kind of limited color space. And we made an active effort to not be in that color space because you don't want it to seem like everything else that's out there. You know what I mean? So that's by design. What we did, and again, the whole reason for doing that color palette is it embeds the characters inside the environment. People are misusing it left and right nowadays, and it's really embarrassing and also very, very tragic. But I wanted to bring that concept of embedding a character inside the environment, but not by not having it go almost through 3 monochrome colors. So we needed to talk about, like, okay, if they're in a red room, right? Some way, somehow, we can infuse the color side of everything with a version of red. And so that's a constant, again, not because Jules doesn't get it, but because we play the game of percentages. Like, what is getting in the way of clarity? What is helping them to embed or inhabit that space, right? So sometimes we do the on and off game, where it's like, here's what it looks like when the red is on him. Here's what it looks like when the red is off of him. And both of them work. It's just that I often, let's say 7 times, 8 times out of 10, I opt for that red and he gets it. But then there are times when I completely throw him for a loop and I'm like, man, let's take that off of that. And he's like, you're killing me, Eric. So if anybody's slowing the process down, it's me. But Jules is an absolute mind reader when it comes to that stuff. Looks more like watercolors, 100%. Mr. Eric Weathers, how are you? I am nearing the end. And by which I am about to bombard Eric Weathers, who is going to be doing, if Jules is doing the heavy lifting in the clarity and the storytelling, right, when it comes to color, Eric is going to be doing the heavy lifting when it comes to you as the reader understanding the narrative. And I want to apologize to you guys now, but more importantly, I want to apologize to Eric Weathers, who's going to letter this book, to be like, where do you expect me to put this dialogue? I promise I made an effort to leave room, but there's going to be times when I suspect you are just going to message me and be like, Eric, I need you to shrink this guy's head because there's no way to put this much talking on here. The process is a little bit different. I don't know how the writers and the creators in this room work, but I have a loose scripting style. Not necessarily Marvel style, but a loose scripting style in which I write down key dialogue that I know is going to help propel the plot forward, key dialogue that helps you understand the characters and how it impacts the scene, gives you a little bit of texture and understand them, who they are. And then I jot those down per page, like in my thumbnails or what have you. And sometimes there's even a layer that I end up hiding where I jot down the dialogue of what I potentially they could say that may still need polish, or maybe it's the thing that I end up using. But from there, what's challenging about that, especially in the process of the, forgive the term, but like the assembly line of a pre-production process, is that I can't just give those little tiny notes to Eric and say, like, good luck with that. Imagine him trying to read through trying to decipher my chicken scratches. So as we had discussed, I was going to get as far as 3 issues and then go back and start writing the dialogue, actually not writing, but like typing up the dialogue so he can just, copy and paste them and do his lettering magic. Anyway, that said, sorry ahead of time, Eric. Better Eric. And also thank you. I really appreciate that. Is this your best work or the work you're most proud of? That's a great question, Rob. But I think I can say it. I think the better way to put it is that this is, by way of my failing but recent memory, the most fun I've ever had working on a comic book. There's a reason why I stepped away a long, long time ago, and a good part of it is because I wasn't having fun anymore. Comics to me, especially when I was really like hustling and trying to maintain some semblance of a comic book career, it wasn't fun anymore. And that's not me putting down my collaborators back then, but I think something had just switched in my head, like I wasn't having fun. So if by having fun I'm producing some of my quote unquote best work, then so be it. I don't remember, well, maybe a couple of days ago when I was super exhausted, right? But I don't remember not getting up in the morning and going like, man, I don't really feel like working on that book, which I can definitely refer back to my history and working in comics, going like, I don't work on that. I don't want to work on that. Or I reframe my brain so I don't end up laboring through it, where I think of it as sort of like this added income to be like, okay, this is going to pay for my floor. This is going to pay for my kitchen, my kitchen remodeling or whatever it is. I don't do that with Athena. I'm having so much fun to go like, and even there's like tedious parts of this, especially this issue again, because I'm feeling the marathon that is producing a miniseries. Like I'm slowing down, like, man, I should be done with this issue already. Eric is waiting. Jules is getting faster and faster, so he's turning the colored pages around pretty quickly, and eventually they're going to be right behind me, But even as I slow down, at no point is it tedious. You know what I mean? I'm not tedious in a bad sense. I know that like, oh God, I got to render those scenes where everybody's upside down because they're being interrogated. And that's a little bit painful, but not because I don't want to do it. I'm enjoying myself the entire time. Scratchy shadows, add a cool textures to the pan. Thank you so much, Manifesto. Yeah, on Twitter, something to remind people that your campaign is launching. Oh, right on. I think that's critical. That's something that between Rob and myself, Rob is really super good about keeping himself accountable by staying in the public eye in regards to his campaign. So take a cue from that. Did you do color test pages? The answer is yes, Rob. I tested for 4 people. 4 people. SDA, how are you? Good evening. Thank you for being here. I'm going to get caught up with chat, I promise. Giuliano is great. He's also a Photoshop teacher. I can tell. Want more Giuliano? I told you this before, but I want to reiterate it again for those who don't know the story. It was Eric Weathers who had posted something. It was like, I think it was he had retweeted it. Oh gosh, I can't remember in what the exact context, but I definitely know it was something for Sovereign Wolf. Which, by the way, if you guys haven't checked out Sovereign Wolf, please go do so now. It's still on Indiegogo, isn't it? Right? Anyway, so I saw the pages that Jules had done, and I said, like, who the heck is that? That looks freaking awesome. And Eric's like, oh, well, it's this guy. So I reached out to him, and we had an extended conversation. He seemed like he was super interested, and off we went. Thank you, guys. I'm really glad. Thank you, man. I appreciate that. Mortal V, I'm glad I don't have photographic memory after seeing Bancroft's ginger. Basco. Okay. Oh, I get you. All right. Thank you. Thank you for informing. Lord Crackhead, how are you? Athena, is that another project of yours? Could be. He can have it. He can do all the work for it. Can you talk more about mood and the color on the scene? Was amazing, your explanation. There's always 3 things that motivate in regards to what color is. The one is the most obvious one, which is just like local color, and you saw it a lot, right? Local color when it comes to, I think that's pretty obvious, right? If we walk into a room, there's a red light in the freaking corner because it's a room that went into lockdown and everything's an emergency. It bathes the entire room in red, right? But there's also something in regards to subtext, right? So subtext is a little bit more nuanced, yeah? Subtext is like you're reading the words and you don't. We are manipulating the emotional space that you're in with color. And a perfect example is that if you take a look at Up, right, the Pixar or Disney movie, Up. There's that really poignant opening scene where I don't think I need to say spoiler, but when he was going through that beginning portion of his life before his wife's death. But there's that really great transitional shift from the beginning portion of their relationship to by the time. So it starts off like a little bit rocky because everything is, as a kid, everything's supposed to be super scary. So they kept these colors in that space. And then when they went into that sort of golden age of their relationship together, all of those colors had a more pastel-y look, right? But the moment she started to pass, you can see everything switch. And that's what I'm talking about when it comes to like adjusting it for subtext, right? Because you want to help stand up the emotional space that you want your audience to feel with that color palette. For sure, we could go into a red room and go like, okay, there's a red light in the corner. There is absolutely there's absolutely every reason to bathe everybody in red because that's what the local color looks like. But if you read the words, you go like, oh, that the red room isn't about a state of panic or a state of emergency. It's actually more about this. Then we'll take a more subtle approach to help stand up the subtext of what those words, what that scene is supposed to be. And then the third version is like super stylistic, right? Like super stylistic that it doesn't really necessarily mean anything unless you want to infuse it with meaning, but it just like punches you in the face, right? So those things often dictate. And the third one we rarely take out of our sort of like Crayola box because it's rare that in Athena you'll land in a space where stylistic color needs to be utilized all that much. And as a matter of fact, if and when we do, it would be such a huge departure on how we conduct ourselves, which is typically those two, which is like local color and emotional color. So that when we go into it, so if we ever use a stylistic color, we're kind of like, oh, that doesn't make any sense. So a perfect example of that, and it's predicated on what needed to happen in the scene, is if you remember, there's this scene in the animated Lion King, right? Simba's about to sing, I can't wait to be king, right? Everything is done in a natural light source, natural color. Again, everything's coming from the sun or something off to the side. But the moment that song kicks on, the style and the color space of the environments change dramatically. And that's to help stand up this really like joyous, really like sort of like boastful scene. But it wasn't an emotional color space, right? Because it wasn't trying to really stand up sort of like a subtextual color. It was trying to go super stylistic in order to help like, infuse this scene with what the theme of the scene is supposed to be, which is, that song. Does that make sense? Hope that makes sense. My painting teacher used to call that color scheme unicorn vomit back in the day. Mr. Weathers managed to work with my no-tell now, so you'll be fine. Have you hired an editor? No, I have not. And that's sort of, that has in the past 2 weeks been bouncing around in the back of my mind as to who I may be able to reach out to in order to really help tighten the screws in regards to the dialogue and the captions. I know that it's essential. I'm convinced, but I don't know. I've never worked with an editor in that capacity before. Most editors that I've worked with in the past, and this is not a to throw any shade on them, but they were more facilitators of the process, right? They weren't really the ones that come in and be like, Eric, I don't know if you're landing that dialogue strong enough, but I know I need one. So if you can recommend one to me, Rob, I'd appreciate it. Eric Weathers says, bring it. Dude, you don't know the curse that you don't know the Pandora's box that you just opened. Action. Oh, wait, the dialogue. Yeah, so I had to treat Athena. It's 5 issues long. And I had to treat Athena almost like each issue or each issue and a half like a 3-act structure. Like The first issue is you get an understanding of the concept and the world that they live in. So by the time we get to issue 2, you're like, okay, I kind of understand the basic mechanics of the premise. You know what I mean? Like, I kind of understand this. These are these people. This is the thing that they're doing. These are these people, and this is how they're countering the thing that we're doing. So by the time we go into issue 2, you get, like, now we start laying down more of the underpinning of the story that leads us into issue 3, issue 4, and issue 5. But then but to be perfectly honest with you, there's not too much of like, woe is me. I just remember that scene in the first Thor movies, like, am I worth being the Thunder God? I'm like, this is painful, man. Throw that hammer around, beat people up, It is predominantly an action comic book, an action adventure comic book. So I don't spend too much time on, like, deconstructing a hero, because I don't think I'd be too interested in doing that. If the creators are having fun in a project, it usually bodes well for us, the reader. I really hope so, man. I really hope so. Was there a moment that made you say to yourself, I have to do this? Shit, what a great question, Rob. No. I had to think about that. But to answer that question better, to rephrase that question, at least for me in regards to Arc Athena, it was like, let me see if I can do this. Right? I think it was a challenge to myself to go, like, stop complaining about all the things that you're seeing out there, about what's broken and how it can be fixed and blah, 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 all of those things, and just be like the guy that's almost like armchair quarterbacking things, just talks a good game, but really when it comes time to put up, I don't have anything to my name. So that was the motivating factor. Because if I were to sort of step out of myself and, like, I can't stand that about, there's a good group of people out there right now who are just hardcore critics. But if you were to ever ask them, that's fine, but what have you ever done? Like the perfect example that I give, well, maybe similar but not identical. But, like, I remember when, Elon Musk had always been sort of, not a COVID denier. So he'd always been, like, question where that information is coming from. I don't think he ever said, like, COVID is not real, but he certainly said, let's make sure that all this data makes sense. Let's just ask. And if the answer is, it does make sense, I'm all about it. But you know how society is. It's like, oh, he doesn't believe in blah, 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 right? So when he got it, right, especially on the weekend or the week that they were about to launch his next space shuttle, I think, the next shuttle, the next spacecraft for SpaceX, man, people were making so much fun of him because he had to go quarantine himself instead of being at that launch, which I know, just based on his previous history, I suspect that he takes a great deal of pride in. And I laughed my ass off, right? Because people were, like, giving him such a hard time. And my personal non-public comeback to those dummies were always like, I remember the last time that you garnered so much wealth that you yourself came up with a space program. Totally, like, it's so cool that you can say shit like that. Yeah, I remember the last time. I remember when you, pulled some of the biggest brains, the most capable minds in the world to come up with your own space program. It's so funny how you can criticize them. So similar to when some guys like make, and I know you're everyone's well within their right to criticize, but there's a line in which people cross where I go like, you have never made a fucking movie before. Like, I understand criticism. I understand, like, being sort of like, you could have done this, that, or this better. But at some point, the validity of your criticism, again, there's a threshold by which you cross that threshold where I just go like, you're just talking. And I got sick in hearing that in myself. Does that make sense, Rob? I got really sick of hearing myself go like, oh, that movie, oh, this, this thing, oh, this comic book, oh, this industry, oh, I just got sick of hearing that. So I thought, you know what, I better shut up. I'm just going to go do the thing. Eric probably doesn't have any problems finding other things to do while waiting. If you're talking about weathers, I think in our initial conversation, when I was asking him, hey, do you have time for this? Would you be interested in working on this thing? If he had said no, I would have totally understood. There may have been, if that had happened, I suspect there may have been some light groveling. I was ready to engage, right? Light groveling. But if he had said no because I'm too busy, I'm doing this, that, or the other thing, I would have totally understood. I know this is a very busy guy, on top of sort of being the guy that a lot of these professional books go to get lettered. He's also working on his own campaigns, and that makes total sense to me. So I would have respected his call if he had walked in the other direction. Thankfully, I didn't have to engage light groveling. Are you going to work in some non-color work in? I don't think so. I don't know how it would I don't know how it would be thematically, but definitely that's food for thought. An artist edition would be cool. Yeah, I think that would be an add-on within the context of the campaign, for sure. Jim Cox, good evening. Thank you for joining us. Did I miss Mortal V? Did I say hey, Mortal V? Hello? We will see you later, Jason. Thank you so much for your time. I know you're in a substantially different time zone than I am, so thank you for making time for me. I appreciate you being here, buddy. I'll sync with you later in regards to those originals. We'll find a way around the quote-unquote gambling headache. Easily one of my favorite streams. Loves Air Perch. Thank you so much. I wanted to confirm with you one more time. We can do this offline. Me joining you next Friday on your stream. I have so many questions for you, man. I feel like I was already coming up. I easily came up with like 2 or 3 today in regards to your own personal experience as a retailer, as a fan of comics, as an observer of trends. I want to pick your brain about any and all of it. And if you don't mind me doing that, when we talk this Friday, if that's still in the cards for us, please forgive me if I just bombard you with so many questions. So anyway, thank you so much, first of all, for the invite, but more importantly, thank you so much for doing the things that you do on your channel. I think you talk from a very level-headed space. Things that you say are I align with an awful lot. So thank you for making those videos. I find great entertainment with them in the beginning part of my morning. It's a great way to sort of, it's a great palate starter. Is there such a thing? There's a palate cleanser. Is there a palate starter in the morning to get me into that right headspace? So thank you for that, and thank you for being here. Hey Jamie, good to see you. I really enjoyed listening to Eric walk through his process here. Nice to hear his thinking. Jamie, thank you for being here. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for joining us. Appreciate your time. Bill Roper's a big fan of yours. He might do it. I know that it could use a different pair of eyeballs, because there are things that make sense to me, but there are also things I know I'm running into plot-wise. I'm like, oh, that's clumsy. Like, as I'm running through the dialogue in my head, as I'm running through the beats in my head, I know, like, either that's clumsy or unnecessary, and I'm unconvinced whether or not it'll work. There's just, and I can cite one thing right now where I'm like, that's either clumsy or dumb, and it may or may not work, but I don't know if it's necessary. So, hello, Joshua. How are you? Good evening. Was it hard getting back in the swing of doing layouts and pages? Yes. And the only reason why, oh gosh, it's 9:05. I'm not doing too bad. Do I normally stay on until 10? The only reason why, pardon me, as I take a sip. So when I did Chrononauts 2 with Mark Millar, there was a deliberate effort because I knew what that was going to be, which means it started off as a comic book, right? It started off as a comic book, but I knew it was going to translate eventually into Millar's Netflix deal, right? I just knew that. Not to say I was catering it to that, but I knew it, right? Well, maybe I'm lying. Maybe I was catering it into the way, but it also fit into a pillar in my storytelling process, which is like, whenever humanly possible, opt for clarity. And I've done the version where it's not clear, right? As an audience, you go like, whoa, cool pose, but I don't know what the frick happened, right? So if you go look at Chrononauts 2, by the way, available all in 4 issues or in trade paperback form. If you go look at Chrononauts 2, everything is in this aspect ratio in which a potential filmmaker, the translation of that to 1-to-1, from shot in the comic book to shot in the film, it's built in. And I've never, wait, let me see if I'm lying. I may have broken the panel once or twice. I can count on 2 hands how many times I broke panels in Chrononauts 2, because I wanted legibility and clarity first and foremost. So to answer your question, was it hard getting back into the swing of doing layout pages? Yes, because with these pages, with Arc Athena, it was about a combination of, and I'll tell you, I think I don't know if you were here before, but Arc Athena in a way is my love letter to the X-Men, Chris Claremont, Paul Smith, John Byrne, Jim Lee, Mark Silvestri, X-Men books that I read. And those things were in their prime, in the summer events like Fall of the Mutants. How many summer events did X-Men have? I remember Fall of the Mutants. I remember, I'm blanking out on it. But like in those summer events, everything had a ramped up nature to them by way of storytelling, the bombastic visuals, and I needed to go relearn that, because I always opt for, like, my background on top of being a concept designer was storyboards. I storyboarded for the longest time, and the parent, like, I think on my social media you can see all my storyboards for Tron Uprising. Everything was constrained in that 16:9 aspect ratio. So to do comics again as an experience, I needed to go relearn this stuff that I knew, or at least the stuff that I picked up on back in the day. So it's hard getting back into the swing of that, of not going like, not immediately going into the 16:9 aspect ratio and doing like quote unquote like traditional stuff that I was doing for Chrononauts, rather opting for that bombastic experience of like that holy shit, the stuff that I used to react to when I would see, double page spreads from like Jim Lee, Oh, people say no to me all the time, man. All the time. As a matter of fact, sometimes the nature, my reputation gets ahead of me of like being difficult to work with. And I used to be so. There's still parts of me that is like a jerk, like a piece of shit to work with. But I was even more intolerable back in the day. If you ever talk to any of my colorists, holy crap, I put them through the ringer. Always will be thrilled to talk with you whenever you're free. I'll make the time. Thank you so much, Perch. I really, really appreciate that. Perch, you're doing some great hard work out there and giving us the real info we should pay attention to. Ah, man, I love it. I mean, I know he's more than this, but sometimes when his numbers videos come out, it is such a validation of my underlying feeling of the things that either A, really caught my eye to go like, I remember reading Civil War II, and I think that Perch covered this, and reading it and going like, this is trying to be an event, but this doesn't feel as good as the original Civil War. And when he went through the numbers, I was like, yep, validated, Palette starter, that'd be cocaine. I don't know what palettes you deal with, buddy, but I'm going to trust that cocaine works for you. Craven's Last Hunt is amazing. It's my all-time favorite spider story, for sure. I'm getting my daughter, who is getting into comics, to listen to Eric's streams. Great info will really help her. It is great stuff. All seriousness, love it. I'm going to maintain, like, ever since, when you're dealing with kids in the house, I remember I just had this conversation with I was having a conversation with my friends in the living room, and they were so amped up about something that they were dropping F-bombs, and I could, my kid is over in the corner and he's just doing whatever it is that he's doing. And I was like, heck yeah, you guys, that's so heckin' amazing. Or that's so effing amazing. And then eventually it dawned on me, I was like, whoa. And they were cursing an awful lot. I'm like, guys, you need to ramp this down to like a 3, because to that point, the point of that is that if you are going to show this stream to your daughter, I'm going to keep the cursing to a minimum purge. So forgive me if I let an F-bomb slip. I know what it's like to be a parent, being very careful. Inferno, Mutant Massacre. Oh, right, Inferno. Holy cow. That's awesome. I said no when Eric tried to peer pressure me into being a wrench on this channel. Looking forward to that bombastic experience. Thank you, Renan. Keep the cinematic format in comics. Don't reduce the potential of the unique form that comics pages have. It all depends on what your attitude is, right? I've had ongoing arguments, civil, definitely, but ongoing arguments about whenever I do those aspect ratios for comics, how I'm not leveraging the experience of comics. My attitude that also helps stand up that level of clarity and almost that level of boringness, if you don't mind, is that hopefully the comic that somebody picks up from me is their first comic. And there's a nature to comics that get overly stylized in their page layouts, that access to entry is immediately cut down, because a person will open the page and go like, I don't know what I'm looking at. It's all of this information, from color to composition to bubbles to, I'm trying to understand style, and like this gun is breaking the panel and I don't understand what. Like, there's so many things that barrier to entry from a first-time comic book reader has to get through. They really have to stick through it. My argument is I'm going to try to simplify it for them. You understand that this picture represents one scene, and it's bracketed by this 16:9 aspect ratio and panel. You move on to the next one, you understand that, you move on to the next one, and so on and so forth. And eventually you build up to, gosh, I'm trying to think of like a comic book. I'm just like, if nobody knows, like if this is the first person, the first comic book a new person picks up, this is a disaster. Like, if I'm having a hard time looking through it, holy crap, I can't imagine the person who's like, I'm interested in comic books, I want to see that, and then they pick it up and they're like, I can't read this. It's hard. Again, the barrier to entry to understand the hieroglyphs that is comic book storytelling sometimes. Almost impossible to breach, almost impossible to get through. So one of the arguments that I have in doing those 16:9s is just like, let's get them understanding the nature of reading left to right, up and down, and then they can graduate to your cool ass shit. Okay, who'd I miss? Hello, Paulus. I don't know if I've seen that icon, but hello, welcome. Purchase video from day, underhype, overdeliver, key to marketing comics. Yeah, that's the other thing. It's just like, I think that video in specific landed with me really pretty profoundly, because I'm in this space now in which I'm understanding, and I think a handful of you guys who are funding or excuse me, in the middle of or about to launch your personal campaigns, there was at one point, and please correct me if I'm missing or misrepresenting this timeline, but there was at one point in which there was an infusion of interest, fervor, and sort of like overwhelming support for anything that was being crowdfunded. But I think a lot of that has sort of tapered off to a more, it's sort of like understanding, to a more true, a true sort of representation of what ultimately can be sustainable moving forward. And to understand the nature of what it was versus what it's turned into now, I really had to do a fair bit of analysis and research as to, and I've seen a handful of people do videos about this, is like, what's next? What is the next thing? And I don't think it has anything to do with sort of like the next bit of hype, right? So to your point, Jamie, I don't think it has anything to do with like the next bit of hype. I think it has a lot to do with delivering on the promise. Does that make sense? Right? Like, I always look at multiple campaigns and I go like, you launched this campaign 2 years ago, right? Like, in order to have stickiness, forgive the term, like in order to have stickiness, you need to put out books, man. And that may differ from other people's like sort of like business approach or strategic approach in regards to their product. But for me, you keep people around because you're giving them something to look at and something to look at consistently. I don't know how somebody can have one book that's yet to deliver, and it was like 3 years ago. Either it either tells me something happened in the pre-production to post-production to delivery process that was pretty catastrophic, or we hold different values in as far as like what our strategy is for our business and our IP and our delivery, or the more tragic one. And I hope this doesn't represent anybody that's out there, but forgive me. Or if it does, please forgive me. You were unprepared to do this full time. You were unprepared for the taxing nature of putting out a book. The beginning part you got caught up in that beginning sort of like, oh, awesome, it's being funded, people are paying attention to it, and then somebody goes, cool, now deliver. And you're like, oh, fudge. And I gotta tell you, some people aren't cut out for it. Any chance you do a YouTube stream where you critique viewers' work and teach people? You seem to understand a lot. Here's the thing. I feel awkward I don't feel comfortable telling people what they can get better at, only because I am on a personal, my art journey is specific to me. And the moment I start giving people advice on the things that they're doing, there is plenty. I'll use my personal experience. There are plenty of things that a mentor of mine explained to me 10 years ago, that by way of frequency, I was just incapable of deciphering. Does that make sense? Like, they would tell me this, and this, change this, and like, but I don't know why that's so useful. Fast forward 10 years, and I'm all like, I get it. That's why that makes sense. It didn't make sense. So for me to give somebody a piece of advice, I don't even know if they've unlocked that in themselves to truly understand how useful that would be to their body of work. So that's always been sort of a personal hang-up of mine. And I'm not projecting that onto the person, but that's a hang-up of mine to not immediately go into like, well, do your anatomy like this. Do your perspective like this. And I did it in... I did it to the howtodrawcomics.net stream about 3 weeks ago to a month ago. And this kid named Joshua, brilliant, he's well on his way. Give him a couple more years, he's going to be freaking amazing. But I remember going through his portfolio, in between myself and John Malin, we bombarded him with like, here's how you can get better. I think a more apt question to always follow up, and I think this is really critical, and I don't know if I did it well, was to ask him, like, was this helpful? Does this make any sense? Which part of this is not landing well with you because you have a conceptual understanding, but you don't have a mechanical understanding of why I'm saying what I'm saying, and therefore you can now start to apply it with your own body of work. I think that's always key. Like, I can explain whatever it is that I can explain to you, give you, again, the foundational nuance of why I'm telling you what I'm telling you. But another key component in order to help that person learn is to always follow up and open it up to, like, actually, I didn't understand that. I don't know why that works, or I don't know why you think that works. Anyway, that's my hang up. No disrespect to Bacala, but steampunk broke my brain. I don't think that broken brain is exclusive just to you, Lex, but to each their own, you know. I am close to the person who inked him on steampunk, my good buddy Richard Friend. And there are times, and Rich, I think, was working on that while I was at Wildstorm, and I would look over his shoulder sometime, and I'm like, it takes a different kind of genius to understand what's going on this page, because I'm not the guy. It's all about sustainability, quality content that can be produced in a timely manner to make comics as a sole means of living, for sure. And that, I think, one of the key things, one of my big takeaways from what you just said right now, Unhinged, by the way, very brilliant point, is quality. And that slider, that interpretation, it has built-in subjectivity to it. It's not simply for the sake of producing a comic book. I think it has something to do with a comic book that has, like you said, sustainability, but also has a level of quality that's up here. You know what I mean? Because that's how you add to that stickiness. That's what makes people keep wanting to come back, you know? I got this. I think that's a condition that you have there, Christopher John. Thank you very much for your time. Yeah, sure, man. I don't know if I'm a master, but I definitely have an opinion about what works for me. It might not necessarily be immediately applicable to you, but I'm glad that you asked. So maybe if what I'm saying is sort of like a buffet of information, there's a takeaway there that you can use for your own body of work, hopefully, or it gives you a better understanding of how I work. Either way. Mitchell, how are you? Eric is being so generous with the advice. I'm starting to have regrets for not accepting a Mo, thank you for being here. I've learned a lot on this first campaign of mine. I think the second campaign will go much smoother. Miss Mindy Lee. So I want to tell you what an inspirational person Mindy is to me, not just as an illustrator, but obviously as a good human being. Mindy and I have become, would you say, really good friends? Am I overdoing it by saying that? But Mindy, it holds a high bar to me because I don't know if there's ever... Mindy challenges me indirectly by doing the kind of art that she does, because it makes me strive to get better, to go like, man, sometimes I take a look at what Mindy does and I go like, I think I'm phoning in half of the stuff that I'm drawing. She finds ways to challenge herself in the space of it could be easy enough for her to turn in something at a very, very high level visually and just be like, people would love it. But Mindy goes, I want to try this thing where the possibility of failure could be so much more catastrophic, and yet she pulls it off every time. And I'm so very glad that she is around to keep me honest, which means keep me working harder with every piece that I do. And I get the opportunity to sit with her at different conventions and just look over her shoulder. And one of the most charming things that she does is that she has like a set of Copic markers, and it's in this little tiny zip pouch that looks like a VW bus. And it's the cutest effing thing in the world. I look at it, I'm all like, she produces magic out of that little tiny VW bus. And she does this thing too that's infuriating, which nobody should be able to make fluorescent Copic markers look that good. But oh my gosh, some of her originals are so saturated with color, saturated with like this fluorescent green, fluorescent yellow that she uses. And it shouldn't work, but it's amazing. I have one of those pieces sitting in my portfolio. Eric Kennedy, did you construct your story by writing it first, or did you sketch it before you wrote anything? I constructed this story. I needed to have a beginning of the beginning of the story, and I needed to have an ending. And I needed to make a point, right? I wanted to be able to land these things with the overarching themes, right? The middle part was a little gummy, and I figured that out as I went along. Beginning, ending, middle part I worked on. So do you still doing comics these days, Eric? I'm doing one now, Mitchell. As a matter of fact, I was supposed to show pages, progress pages, but I got too caught up talking to people about answering their questions as succinctly as I could. I overtalk. I'll show you some pages, promise. Richard Friend and Kelsey Shannon's Blaster Kid looks pretty exciting and up my alley. Yeah, I can't keep up with Rich. Rich has just way too much detail in each and every single one of his pages. I can't keep up with him. But I love being a fan. I love sitting back and going like, there's a guy that's super passionate about his project, and I'm glad that he's on it. So probably the only thing I own of your work was the Iron Man book you did with Joe a few decades ago, and a little bit new to your work. That's okay. Thank you for being here. Thank you so much for buying that Iron Man book, and thank you so much for finding me now. I appreciate your time. I love steampunk, but those layouts seriously hurt my brain. They hurt mine too. Okay, here we go. I'm done asking or answering questions. I think I'm caught up with chat. Can we take a look at pages now? All right, you guys tell me which ones of these you've seen already. Wait, I think did we see the opening for by the way, spoilers. Athena 3. Have we seen all the pages for have we seen the pages for the opening yet? We saw this last time, right? Okay, good. I'm just gonna pinch in and out. I think we've seen these already. Can I see that all right? Oh yeah, I remember distinctly talking about like scale and how the heck do I make scale work without having to do like because scale optimally works when you have a point of reference, right? Obviously. If there's a guy standing there and you put a building right now, or there's a giant robot standing there, put a building that you have a clear understanding of those are windows and that's about 10 feet between floors. You have an understanding, okay, that's a pretty huge freaking robot. But then there are times when you don't have the utility of using the entire page. What the heck? I didn't clean up that panel. That's dumb. In the upper right hand corner, I should clean up that effect. Anyway. I see that all right? Cool. Okay. Okay, I think this is so there's these little tiny, I like to call them like little cues, right? That I want to change your perception of where you are in time and or where you are in the storytelling space, not necessarily time, but where you are in the storytelling space. So we're going to go into this flashback scene, and I was trying to come up with a way to express what that flashback scene looked like, but to also contextualize it to the action and by what's motivating that flashback scene, right? And I was trying to in the pencils, and I can show it to you. Hold on. Let me turn this layer off, and you guys can see what the pencils look like, right? In the pencils, I sort of greeked in this sort of weird slashy what I tried to accomplish with that sort of like, a diagonal line was the blurred effect of when you're looking through somebody's eyes. You see, I just saw a recent interpretation of it in Inside Out, that Disney Pixar movie of when the baby was being born, or like every time they looked out of her eyes, they would have this sort of, blurred edge, like they're looking through her eyeballs or looking through her perspective. And I thought I would be able to do that when it came time to doing the panel design, the panel borders. And when I tried it, it looked awful. It looked so poopy and cheesy, not because it was a bad idea, but because I couldn't execute it. So instead, I came up with this panel border design, which I wanted to have this feeling of like uncomfortability. When you're looking through this, and again, when you read the story and understand it in context, you're like, oh right, that is a really uncomfortable way of extracting this sort of flashback, this sort of memory. Anyway, and it continues through these scenes. And it continues through these scenes, right? Are these the page? I think did I show you guys? No, I think I was working on these pages the last time that we spoke. I don't know if I had gotten this far in showing you. So these are all the pages that I think I finished this page the last time that, this page was done, definitely done by the time I streamed last Monday. Right? Now the tricky part was how to come out of that panel border. I think this was the last thing I worked on last Monday. Definitely, because I remember doing the effects on the trees on this rainy funeral scene with the caskets. So this is, every page hereafter is all the pages that I worked on. Okay. I think it's better that I don't end up talking about it because maybe there's spoilers involved, but I finished this page yesterday and I was dreading it. I got to this page and I was like, look at all this stupid detail and I got to put everybody upside down and but in the end, I hope that when you see it, especially after Jules comes in and colors it, that it'll be such an amazing experience visually. And then, let's see. Is Jules still in the room? And I actually wanted to ask him a question. Jules, are you still here? Because I don't know how ultimately helpful this will be for him, but I decided to put this hologram of what I refer to as the Akira ball. There you go. Hey Jules. So I put this this hologram of the Akira ball on a completely different layer. That way you wouldn't have to sit there with some painstakingly find a way to select tool everything. So I'm going to deliver it to you with this hologram on a different layer. That way you can do your magic to it, do whatever glow effect. Now the issue here, and as I was looking, I finished this one last night and I looked at it again this morning because I like to sleep on things. It's like, how the heck is that going to read? Because it was a fish, and this is a bad example, but let's say this was a fish, right? And it was a hologram of a fish. It's easy enough for you to understand. Okay, I get it. It's a hologram of a fish. Even if we were so heavy-handed as to have it in a dialogue, right? But because it's this thing that you've never seen before, if you do any sort of glowing effect on it, it's almost going to become illegible. So thank God Eric Weathers is going to be here to be like, oh, look at this hologram of the Akira ball. And this is, to Rob's point, if Rob is still here, to Rob's point, this is where an editor comes in and goes, Eric, we need to hold the audience's hand through that scene, just so we understand what you're looking at, you know? Anyway, I put on a separate layer for you, Jules. And I think everything else you've seen, right? Wait, yeah, I just finished this one today as well. I like having these 3 panels. The other challenge is that, especially from a drawing point of view, because I'm not drawing a typical sort of like person that you can understand, and there are sort of these like, when you're drawing a regular person, there are these anatomical ciphers that you go like, oh, that's probably not the way a real nose looks, but I understand that's sort of like a shorthand of what a real nose will look like, and the underside of a chin, and so on and so forth. So you accept that world, you accept the left and right handle, as I like to refer to it, like it's stylistic, but you understand within the world of this is what that's supposed to interpret. But when I'm drawing aliens, right, especially like intergalactic space alien types, once I start doing a mouth that's bigger than a typical human mouth, once I start doing eyes that are on the side of its head as opposed to being up here, once I start omitting, again, these visual ciphers, that is a nose, because you don't have that anymore. Imagine Voldemort from Harry Potter. The moment she tilts her head up and that nose triangle goes away, it takes a little bit of time for the audience to understand what that's supposed to be. So I was really being careful to frame it in such a way that there's enough information there to understand what that is. It's a challenge because I'm drawing weirdo space aliens. Okay, and I think I've shown everything else, no? I showed you guys this a little while ago, 3 weeks ago. Right? I show you the robot that transforms into a giant drill and somehow like drills through. It's so strange. As I'm seeing all of these pages smushed together. Cool. I have about 30 minutes, and I think I'm going to be able to finish. Now, I didn't work on these this week. I just wanted to show some of the people who are new the sort of progress that I've been going through for issue 3. And again, as soon as I'm done with issue 3, I stop that and I start doing the script so that I can hand everything over to Eric Weathers, and he can start doing that arcane magic that he does. Okay, I think I'm leading into the most recent page that I was working on before I hit the go live button on stream. There you go. And I think I was on this page. Did I officially finish this page? Nope, there's little clouds in the background. So I'm going to finish these clouds and then call this a stream because I got about 20 minutes. But first, let me back up and try to catch up with chat. Thank you so much for you guys sticking around. I appreciate your company. But let me see if I can backtrack a bit and answer questions. Oh, good. I didn't have to. Thank you, Eric. Always look up to you. You're very kind. Not necessary, but you're very kind. Oh, cool. Just haven't heard you were still doing comics. I wasn't for the longest time. I was doing animation and video game work. similar to a good friend, Trent Kanuga. It was just not sustainable for me to do comics. I wasn't fast enough. I wasn't landing the big projects well enough. My style wasn't relevant in the comic book scene. And I genuinely believe it's my overall assholicness and the difficulty of working with me that prevented me from having any sort of longevity in mainstream comics. Wow, this looks great. Thank you so much, Mitchell. I appreciate that. I remember finding your comic Run, Love, Kill, and Chrononauts, Sean G. Murphy, and find out you would later do Volume 2. Yeah, that's a good act to follow, Sean Murphy. Great act to follow. He established a lot of things for the book. Mark Millar was kind enough to trust me with following Sean, and I had so much fun working on that. A really uncomfortable way of extracting. This is starting to sound like a bad dentist appointment. That's the themes of this book. I just wanted to do a all dentists all the time miniseries. Mindy Lee, are you Mindy Lee Doodles on Instagram? That's her. That is a legend. Thanks, man. It will help a lot. Oof. Okay, good. Good. No effort wasted, I say. Someone validated Rob's opinion with an earshot of Rob. This one. Does Rob have a big ego? Is Rob egocentric? If I had a choice of what I could reincarnate, it would definitely be a giant robot. I mean, it could come back as something worse, for sure. To put it mildly. Oh, his ego. Okay, all right. Never came off that way to me. Rob is ego? Is he? Is he ego? Again, I have no experience of Rob's ego. You guys seemingly have a more intimate and better understanding of the inner workings of Rob. I'll defer to you. Oh, let's finish these clouds. It's going to take me 15 minutes to finish clouds. Okay, is that it? Am I missing anything that I wanted to update you guys on? Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. So I'm going to keep drawing. And I would hope that Rob is still around so that he can defend himself from slights, public slights against his character. Rob, if you're still here, they're accusing you of having a very healthy ego. Am I saying that? Am I being too conservative with that descriptive? Are you guys saying he has a healthy ego or overabundance of ego? You know what I didn't do? Can I tell you guys this? I didn't tell anybody that I was live. That's weird. That used to be part of my process back when I was, streaming a lot more consistently. Although I've been doing this I'm back streaming in by way of I was doing it 3 times a week as opposed to 1 time per week. But I should get into the business of hey, I'm streaming. I'm now going to go on Instagram and tell people that I'm live, or go on on Twitter and tell people that I'm live. I'll do it next time. I wanted to keep our conversations as intimate as possible anyway. So to those of you who are here, who managed to find me, or who were kind enough to subscribe to my channel and click that very critical notification bell, I appreciate it. I get so nervous when you guys are around, I can't even draw clouds. Let's try this again. And this time, not think of them as clouds, but as compositional elements. How about that? Is that useful? Take the pressure off. it's a hard, it's a challenging thing to sort of come to terms with. That if you're like, I've seen this in a handful of panels before, and I could see the intent, right? Which is, let's say the example is using these bands of clouds, right? This is garbage. But using these bands of clouds and not getting caught up in how to render them as clouds, but rather as compositional elements so that it'll lead your eye, whatever your intent may be, whether it be it leads your eye through the panel, right? It helps to complement the composition of the people as they're stacked up on top of each other, which is what I'm trying to do now. I'm getting hung up in over-rendering it rather than just leave them as these, I wouldn't say abstract, but rather than leaving them as shapes that help with that composition. So just a second ago, I was like, okay, well, as a matter of fact, I even looked up how Katsuhiro Otomo rendered clouds for Akira, right? I was like, ooh, I want to use those clouds. And then before stream, I took an initial pass of what those clouds may look like, and I was like, oh, this is way too busy. This is way too much. So I erased that, and that's why you're looking at what you're looking at now, because I decided I'm just going to simplify. Okay, cool. Done with this page. I'm going to move on to the next one. I think I had one lined up already to work on. Oh, I actually finished this without it taking 15 minutes. Look at me. Is that done? Yeah. Well, it's done enough. How about that? Cool. Okay. Look at this lone page right here. This guy. This lone page of uninked. Oh, boy. He's by himself. There's like, I am 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pages away, Jules and Eric Weathers. 5 pages away from being done with issue 3. I like that. Are any of those clouds... the entire book is happy accidents. Handro Taz. For the most part, some of it is like sketched out and rough, but it's all like, oh, I don't know what I meant by that bump over there. I'm just going to ink it. Have you ever seen Rob and Malin on stream? My ISP couldn't even broadcast that much. Are they that smug? I don't know. I know you go live Monday and Wednesday at the same time, Bancroft does. I choose to watch quality over Bancroft any day. Aw. I don't know, man. Michael does some really quality streams. I love the way he comes up with super relevant and engaging topics for his stream. For those in the opportunities that I've been able to stick around for the duration, what I love is that his community, his chat, again, super engaged. They want to be able to contribute to that ongoing conversation. And as a streamer, I think you want that, you know? I think that's if you can craft that sort of conversation and bring out and compel people to sort of go along with whatever narrative that they have in their head to contribute to that, I think that's pretty awesome. If you love Bancroft's topics, you should watch Leroy's stream from 2 days prior. Are you insinuating that Bancroft just takes things from Leroy? Is that true? The juggernaut that has become AR-15 orangutan is a happy accident. I was just trolling, bro. Do you ever use the default brushes or purchase the ones you use? I purchase the ones I use, and I've gotten this question 3 weeks ago, maybe as far back as a month and a half ago. And they were like, what brushes are those? And I'm like, I couldn't tell you. I go in like different places, from Cube Brush to where are all the other avenues that you can get different Procreate brushes. And I found the ones that I felt as close to my traditional inking line and look, and adjusted it accordingly. So I don't even know what the brushes are called. You've grown to like Bancroft's show. There's good reason why, man. Really, really good reason why. Okay, I will draw. Here we go. What am I drawing? Okay, this. Can I finish her head of her torso before I have to sign off? 10 o'clock my time. We're making plans for our campaign, and one of the things that I spoke to Rob about offline, is that I don't have the same sort of credentials. Maybe credentials is not the right word. Let's use credentials for now. I think I can think of a better word, but I don't have the right sort of credentials to have an inherent equity of trust extended to me by potential customers, potential readers such as yourself. Hopefully, when the campaign starts, you guys find it within yourself to support Athena at campaign launch, right? But I don't want to. I want to find a way to be able to garner your trust as a supporter of my book and an audience for my work. And one of the things that isn't, and it's accidentally done it, I'm not saying it was done maliciously, right? I don't think it was done with any sort of malice or poor intent. But one of the things that's sort of helping to inform how you conduct yourself in regards to a supporter to creator is that there are all these other campaigns that have not fulfilled yet. Does that make sense? Like, and it's not on me to point out which ones. But what I'm saying, just based on my research, based on my digging around, I was like, whoa, that's been so long since that's gotten into readers' hands, to the point where, and this is common, and you guys can tell me if this is off or not, but there are times I've heard more than a half a dozen stories, if not a complete dozen stories, of people going like, oh yeah, I don't even remember funding that, and then finally it got delivered to me. That's mind-boggling to my head, but that has a lot partially to do with the way things are set up in regards to crowdfunding, which is I do X amount of pages as a creator who's about to be crowdfunding. I do X amount of pages. I start the crowdfunding. I then take the money from that crowdfunding, and that's what I'm using for the pre-production, for my artists, for my colorists, for all of that stuff, right? Makes total sense. So that takes amount of time. Takes a certain amount of time to also do the post-production, which is like the book, and then finally getting them into sort of into mailers that'll get out to you, right? And the travel time that it'll take to get out to you. And on average, not taking into account, life stuff that happens in other people's campaigns, on average, and I'm saying this conservatively, it's about 8 months. 8 months from from end of campaign and into your hands, and you're kind of like, and that's become the normal. This sort of like that's the accepted. And again, please tell me if I'm off. Okay, I want to hear from all of you. But my way of, at least the plan to garner your trust, because Athena is a 5-issue limited series, right? That means this thing is going to be running back to back to back, and it's like, oh my gosh, that is a lot to ask out of you. If I were to take that 8-month gap between, between issues for it to get into your hands, I don't want to do that to you. But what we are planning for those of you, and this is going to be in theme within the world, the science fiction, or the world that is Athena, right? Is that we are going to have what we call the influencer tier. Hello, Michael Bancroft. How are you? We are going to have in the campaign with each issue the influencer tier, which is the bare bones version of the book. It's going to have an alt cover that is the influencer tier of the book. And if I, by hook or by crook, right, at the end of the campaign, that book, if you're just buying it for whatever tier price that it is, and I think it's going to be somewhere in the vicinity of like $20 to $30. We haven't made up our minds yet, but we're just talking the bare bones version of the book. No premiums, no add-ons, no posters, none of those cards, blah, blah, blah. We're talking about just the book because I believe in that. I believe in the idea that the people who are going to be buying into that tier just want to have the experience of reading it. From end of campaign, it's in your hands in 3 weeks. That's what I'm aiming for. End of campaign, 3 weeks later, you have issue 1. And if I can gain your trust like that, to be like, oh shit, Canetti's serious. That entire effing team that is that's fulfilling the Athena book, right? I can't believe it that the email went out. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for supporting Athena. 3 weeks later, you have the book in your hand. And we're going to do that for every book in the series, for every issue, for each installment. But that's the baseline influencer tier. And our hope with that is, again, garnering your trust and generating the sort of excitement behind it as people who are reading it to be like, I got that Canetti book and I'm excited to have it. Or could flip the other way. It was like, oh, I got that Canetti book and it sucks really, really bad. But I want to establish a track record of delivery for our audience, Anyway, I'm introducing that to you now because I want to be able primarily to be held accountable for it. And that's the other thing. As part of that sort of, supporter, reader, audience trust building is that level of accountability. If that makes any sense. I hold myself accountable to you guys because if you're going to support me, I want to give you that best customer experience, and not just as a reader and as an audience, but also as a person that's buying it, as an individual buying it, like having it in your hand, and focusing primarily on the book. Of course, there's going to be extras to it. Of course, there's going to be like little premiums that's going to add to the overall experience. But focus really heavily on the foundational concept that is producing a book. Does that make sense? Oops. And I think we've come up with a system in which we're going to be truncating that delivery time. Now, I'll tell you this. it's not going to be inexpensive. But I figured, and we talked about it, between myself and my buddy Jason Schachter, who's going to be doing my original art dealer, and he's going to have the fulfillment team in place. We talked about the costs, and we thought like, well, this is obviously going to eat into whatever, concept of sustainability that we may have up front, right? But in my mind, especially as the sort of fervor of supporting something just for the sake of supporting something is sort of tapering off. What are we doing that's so significant than what anyone else is doing? And I think what we can do is make that, it's not even necessarily even a sacrifice. It's a shifting of expectation in our team's minds to go like, well, we can look at that, those numbers from back in the day, or we can start establishing for ourselves what our metric of success looks like, right? And one of those metrics, and I can't emphasize this enough, and I hope this doesn't get too cheesy for you guys, one of those metrics is earning your trust. A huge pillar in our foundational business is earning that trust. So anyway, keep an eye out for that. And if you can, once we get closer and closer, and everything is finalized, because who knows, tomorrow Jason could be like, Eric, this is nuts. This is going to cost us more than anything that the campaign will ever yield, and I'll give you guys that update. But right now, I'm challenging the entire team to be like, Jason's going to push back, right? I'm like, end of campaign in your hands in 3 weeks. Jason's going to be like, dude, that's freaking crazy. Can we do 6 weeks, a month and a half? And I'll be like, okay, but at least let's have that conversation, Looking after backers isn't cheap, but would you rather give that money to the tax man? It's win-win. I really think it's a lot of expectation. It's like a lot of expectation reshifting, right? Not on the backers, customers, readers side, the audience's side, because you guys know what you want, right? It's from the printer side, or excuse me, from the creator side. I don't want to get hung up looking at a now fulfilled, pre-existing, whatever you want to refer to it as, like a campaign that's already happened, and go like, that's the metric. That's the thing that we are going to hold ourselves accountable to. That doesn't make sense. We have to establish, our team has to establish what that metric is. And if we take, and there's no, and we don't want to be money stupid, you know what I mean? We don't want to be just like, oh, we're going to burn through so much money and we're going to end up being more in the red and in the black. That's just poor business. But what we want to do is focus on how to get you on board long term, right? Because Athena is 5 issues, right? What is the idea, what is the optimal amount of investment in your audience so that once issue 2 comes around, issue 3, issue 4, they are that much more invested in your product. They are so excited to have it. And I want that for the audience. Does that make sense? Now, it could fail. Who knows? But I think it's worth it. You may have answered this in the past, but do you have a printer in mind? Yes, I do. I think your approach is smart. Personally, I think someone has to have a fast turnaround on their first campaign. Backers will remember a fast follow through. That's how you build constant readers. You and I are on the same page, Jamie. That's exactly it. If I can encapsulate it into that, I'm not competing. I'm not competing with Marvel. I'm not competing with mainstream comics. That doesn't make sense to do that. Again, that's taking the structure and how they do business and going like, we got to be like those guys, right? That doesn't make sense. In as much as it doesn't make sense for me to take previously fulfilled or what have you, like previously existing campaigns and saying like, okay, now that's the structure by which we build our house around, right? Doesn't make sense to me either. So I'd rather not do that. I'd rather say we're going to do this the way we think works, right? Keeping the consumer, keeping the backer and reader, the audience in mind. Are you planning a tier that has all 5 issues? Probably not until near the end. Now, here's the other thing, and I think this is critical for this thing to work. In contrast to all the other, maybe there's a handful out there that are the examples of this, and I don't want to come off as too overconfident, because I don't think that's the point. The point is, we saw how things have been planned out in regards to these campaigns. I gave the example earlier, which is, do X amount of pages, launch the campaign, show that off, and go like, oh, I'm, as an audience or as a potential backer, I'm going to buy into that. I like this art. I like the sort of the premise of the story. And then the guy goes and, the creators go out and produce the pages for the book, right? And that's a considerable amount of time doing the pre-production. That's the reason why with Athena, I'm doing all the pages first. Again, just keep doing whatever we can on our end to keep narrowing that time, narrowing that delta of like end of campaign and into your hands, right? Just anything that we can do to stack the deck on our favor. And also, some of the reasons, not all, but some of the reasons is like life, right? Life somehow finds a way into you not being able to produce those pages. I never, in the team of like between myself, Jules, Eric Weathers, I don't ever want to be the weak link where they're sitting there and waiting for me, right? Like, what the heck is taking so long? I would rather be the person that's done, and knowing those two, as professional as they are, they're not going to be the ones that drops the ball either, So, the goal is not just to produce the books, but also to gain your trust. I just know that on the fulfillment end, my art dealer and his team, I think I'm going to end up killing those guys. And I'm laughing. Not because they can't do it, but because I know how DTF those guys are. My first thing that I ever crowdfunded was a collection of my artwork from my old blog spot, and by the time it was like maybe 4 years worth of work, maybe more. And it turned out to be, after all was said and done, and I have there's multiple editions. There's different editions of this sketchbook, my collected sketchbook, right? And I mean, even without the special edition one that had like an aluminum cover with my logo etched out onto the aluminum, just the normal one with the book itself, 5 years worth of work, 300, closer to 400 pages in a clamshell, it was about £8. And after the campaign closed and they were starting to fulfill, I just remember Jason telling me, I think I need to have my vertebrae infused or fused, because lifting your frickin' books to get them into the buyer's hands damn near broke my back. And so I'm laughing sort of guiltily at that idea, but also because I'm so incredibly proud of that team. Incredibly proud of Jay and how much he believes in making sure that you as a supporter of my work, you get your hands on it and you're happy with the product, even to the point where he ends up breaking his back over it. $10 says, as soon as I get off stream, I'm going to erase this thing and start over. Oh, I have a person that can corroborate that in chat. Mindy and I are repped by the same art dealer. Now, the danger here is if I go like, hey, Mindy, what do you think of Jason? And like Mindy hates him. Oh, that would be bad. Maybe he's like, I don't know why you like him so much, Eric. He's a garbage tier human being. Uh-oh. All right. I think I have 5 more minutes. You know, one of the people that I had reached out to in the very, very beginning, when I was planning on doing this book, kept telling me, don't do 5 issues. That's freaking crazy. I said, why not? And they said, because there's no version of it that's been done before in regards to, again, this is just one person's perspective, so maybe they didn't know the ones that's pre-existing. I know that Donald has, on a couple of occasions, pointed me towards somebody that may resemble what I have in mind. Anyway, they said, don't do it. Do it like this instead, something that's been done before. And I immediately had an allergic reaction to that. Not because that person wasn't, saying what I wanted to hear. I had an allergic reaction to it because it's been done before. And where's the fun in that? Right? There's more, admittedly, there is more possibility for things to get really, really screwed up because there's no playbook for it quite yet. But I just think it's going to be fun. I just think as an audience, I mean, I'm trying to imagine it from the perspective of somebody who's super into something and how incredibly excited I was to to buy a book that I was into back in the day, and being such an advocate and acolyte for it, you know, trying to tell as many people as I could, like, you gotta read the X-Men, you know. And when they would get hooked, I'd be like, yep, see, told you. Real good, right? I want to be able to help recreate that feeling. Oh, good. 10:16. All right. I'm going to do my very best to sign off as graciously as I can. But first, let me thank each and every single... Wait, let me scroll up. Let me see if I missed anything. All right, there you go. Encore, that's the name of the book. And they are very DTF. And once he gains your trust, boom, suddenly he needs to buy your lawnmower. But not just your lawnmower. I need you out of the house so I can stay in it for a few days. I'm hoping he meant down to fight. You can hope that. I like this better, down to fund. Yeah, no, the special edition version that we only made 150 of, had an aluminum cover. I don't know where it is, but it's like I was transporting it at one point from my home to a local bookstore that carried these art books in LA. And I remember trying to get them into my car and like, oh my God, Jason had to move any X amount of these units. No wonder his back is broke. James Patel, how are you? Hey, Eric, glad to see you putting yourself out there again. Always enjoys the Twitch streams. Thank you for coming back, James Patel. Fortunately or unfortunately, depending on how you look at it, you caught me near the end of my stream, but I really do appreciate your company. Thank you for being here and thank you for supporting me. Do a second collection. That's a good question. That's a good suggestion. Okay, don't put that seed in my head. I'm gonna want to do it like tomorrow, and I've got too many things on my plate. And now you like him just fine. Good. I didn't. You're not led. Did I recommend? Did you find Jason on your own, Mindy, or is it a conversation that you and I had? Because if he was a jerk and I'm the person that helped you get there, I'd feel bad and responsible. Great stream, Eric. Even Bancroft in chat. Oh, you guys are tough. You guys are tough. Peter, thanks for the stream. Yep. Night, everybody. Always a pleasure. Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening if you're not already doing so. Oh, by the way, heads up, I'm going to postpone doing more of the Sunday time lapses where I talk over my YouTube. I talk over my process and upload them on Sundays on YouTube. I want to get this issue done. I want to get these 3 issues all scripted, ready to go, and in Eric Weathers' inbox and ready to be lettered. And I'm trying to do that before end of month. So March just having started, I'm going to take the rest of this month to get this thing get this thing all lined up. And again, ready for him to work on as soon as possible. And as soon as that's all shored up, I'll go back to doing the weekly time-lapse video uploads. But between now and then, please forgive me. I hope you understand the motivation for it. Or at least I'm telling you the motivation for it. I hope you understand why I'm doing it, right? Anyway, if you're not already following me, please do so. I'm pretty active on Twitter and on Instagram. Instagram.com/Eric Canetti, Twitter.com/Eric Canetti. My website, if we did things correctly, should be launching either Wednesday or Thursday, by which we're going to start having the newsletter sign up. I'll give you guys more of a heads up on that. If not through the week, you'll definitely hear from me again next Monday when we do this. If you're not already doing so, please follow me here on YouTube. Click that thumbs up for this channel. Hit that notification bell so you know when I go live. I think that's it. You guys have a wonderful Monday night, Tuesday morning, depending on where you are in the world. Thank you for joining me. and we'll chit-chat later. You guys have a wonderful evening. Bye.